Hi, it's Jamie here from Beyond the Transcript and Transfer Savvy, or you might know me from Online G3. I wanted to talk a little bit about validating homeschool learning for college admissions. Whenever I talk to homeschoolers about their biggest fears in college admissions, I hear some of the same thoughts. So I thought I would put together this little video to hopefully help ease your mind. So let's start with just what do colleges want? What are they asking of our students? Really, it's simple. It's just evidence of the ability to succeed at their school. They just want to know which kids are going to be able to meet the challenges at their school. So, with that in mind, what do you think is the best indicator of future success in college? It's a big debate these days. Spoiler alert, it's family income. But that's a story for another day. Let's talk about what else might be a good indicator. It's actually grades and GPA, and you may have seen this in the news lately. We see a lot of talk about tests. Should we be test optional? Should we require tests? Do tests help us understand what our students are capable of? But it turns out that grades and GPA really are the best indicators of future success. So for homeschoolers, of course, that brings up the question of, do mommy grades count? The short answer is yes. I ask admissions officers this all the time. What do you do with, quote, mommy grades? And they say they have to take them at face value. That's just how it is. They're going to trust that we've been honest about our kids. And let's really be honest, we're usually tougher on our kids than other school systems might be. So our grades are pretty trustworthy. But the long answer is a little more complicated. So let's dive into that. We want to validate the learning that our kids have done. We want to show these college admissions officers what our students are capable of and have some outside measures of learning that can make it easy for them to understand what our students have done and where they've succeeded. So some places you could prove readiness is completion of the standard subjects. Make sure you've covered all of the regular subjects that your student would cover in school. Look for rigorous courses, whether you're creating the courses yourself or outsourcing them. High test scores, maybe. If your student is a good test taker and applying to schools that still accept tests, that could be a boost. Student writing, there will be a personal statement and probably some other supplemental essays to allow your student to shine. Extracurricular activities, what do they do with their free time? Homeschoolers often have more free time than kids in school, so what have they done with that free time? What have they pursued in those extra hours that they spend not having to wait in line for lunch at school? And then, of course, recommendations from teachers or coaches or other outside non-family members. By standard subjects, here's what I mean. Typically, we want to see 4 years of English and make sure that we're including writing in that. 3 to 4 years of math through at least Algebra 2. Science, another 2 to 3 years, including 1 life science and 1 physical science. More if you're a STEM kid looking to major in something in STEM. History and social science, 2 to 3 years, including both world and U.S. government. And I'd make sure that you've got some U.S. history and U.S. government combined in there. World history, 2 to 4 years of the same language. Visual and performing arts, not all schools require it, but the ones that do usually want to see 1 year of the same art. And then, of course, there are plenty of areas for electives for your students to pursue their own interests. And maybe that means more history or more English or more art, or maybe it means something totally different. Electives are really up to you. So rigor, if we want to make sure that we're showing rigor on our transcripts, how on earth are universities going to know what's rigorous? Well, they also have to do this with regular schools. When we're looking at your regular public school or private brick and mortar school, they usually have a reputation. Regional representatives of universities get to know the high schools in their areas. High school counselors build relationships with those representatives. So that's some of what's known out there. But small schools and homeschools are unknown entities. But that's okay, because there are still a lot of us, and they have to do their jobs to figure out what these small schools are doing. So that's where your school profile comes in. Most schools are creating these school profiles and have them readily available on the internet. You can simply Google the name of a school nearby that you know and school profile. And you should find a maybe 2-page document that talks about the availability of their courses. What counts as honors? Do they do AP or IB? Or what are the test scores of their students? What's the demographic measure in their communities? These are things that you, as a homeschool parent, will also be writing in your school profile or your homeschool profile. And that's how you're going to let the colleges know how rigorous your homeschool was. It's the same thing that schools would do. So what are some external signs that we can use so we can validate those mommy grades? Well, yes, tests are one of the big ones. And I used to recommend the SAT-2, the SAT subject test. That was a great way to show that your students really had learned the subjects. But of course, those are gone now. So next up, college dual enrollment. That's a pretty good way to show that your kid is ready for college. I mean, what is a better indicator of the ability to succeed in college than already succeeding in college, right? And then there's the whole advanced placement program, which the College Board said was going to be the replacement for the SAT-2 subject tests. So let's go ahead and start with tests. Test optional. Most colleges are test optional at this point. There are a few that are starting to reinstate test requirements, and there are a few schools that have gone completely test blind, as in they won't even look at the test scores if you try to send them. So here's my advice with test optional. Do not send scores to universities before you see them. When you sign up to take the SAT or the ACT, you'll usually have the opportunity to send those scores right away to a couple of colleges for free. But that means you don't control them. Those scores are out of your hands. So when your kids are signing up for these classes or these tests, make sure that they know not to send anything out for free. Not yet. It's worth the fee to send them later once you know what those scores are. Also, make sure that you're evaluating the scores in the context of the target school first. What are the average scores at that school? Will your student be better served by sending those scores and showing that they're at the top of the averages for that school? Or would that actually harm them? Now, for homeschoolers, sometimes it's a little bit trickier. If you don't have a lot of outside validation and the scores are pretty good, you might want to send them. Some schools will even require them. They'll say, if you're homeschooling, we need to see test scores because we don't have much else to go on. So pay attention to all of those things and listen to your child, see what they're ready for. Just as a little side note here, if a school is test blind, they won't accept scores for admissions, but they might still be willing to accept some scores for placement and validation, as in to prove that your student has completed certain subjects. All right, test options. Darn that SAT-2, it is gone now. But we still have the main SAT and the ACT, which does include a science section. There are the stamp tests for foreign languages, lots of different foreign languages, more than you'll see in AP. So that might be something to look into. And then, yes, of course, there is the AP program, which the College Board has said is our replacement for SAT-2. So if you want to go that route, if you want to show that your student has these advanced abilities by using AP courses, first, make sure that the course is coming from a College Board approved provider. That might be you. It is possible for parents to sign up as College Board approved providers. So if you are providing that content, make sure that you are registered so that that class will be acknowledged as a true AP class. But also, these AP classes are validated with the AP test. That's kind of the point of the whole program. So if you're not going to take the test, stop and question why you want to do the class. I've talked to many admissions officers, and most tell me that the test is the more valuable aspect of this program because it's fully standardized. There's a variety of teaching out there, grading philosophies, readiness for the tests, grading systems within schools, a lot of variables out there that we can't control for. But a test score that is standardized on a national level, that's a pretty good piece of information for them. However, as you may know, it is very difficult for homeschoolers to get into AP tests. You can't just register on the College Board website the way you can for SAT and ACT. You have to find a local school that will allow your child to test on their campus during one of their test sessions. And there's really no motivation for a school to do that. If they're going to help you with that, it is truly just out of the goodness of their hearts that they would be willing to let your child test with them, because they don't get much from it. If your child needs accommodations, this becomes even more difficult. Very few schools want to let outsiders in to test. Very few want to then come up with special accommodations for outside kids who don't attend their school. So it's really something that's difficult. So before you embark on an AP journey, find out if you have a place to test, because if you don't, there may not be any point. So call around to local schools early in the fall, September. Most schools are having to order their tests and decide when and how and who will be taking their AP tests. So don't delay if you're going to try that. Also, let's just acknowledge that high stakes tests can be stressful. And our students who maybe haven't been in traditional schools for a long time, they may not be prepared to take that kind of high stakes test that goes on for hours. They haven't been building up the stamina for years. So definitely something to consider whether or not this is an appropriate path for your child. So another alternative is dual enrollment, and I'll admit my bias. I'm a big fan of dual enrollment, partly because AP tests are so hard to come by for homeschoolers, but also because there are these added benefits for dual enrollment. This allows your child to definitively prove that they are ready for university level work. It also allows parents and tutors and coaches to provide scaffolding in a familiar environment. Better for your kid to learn about reading a syllabus and how to email a professor and attend office hours with you there at home to nudge them than when they're off living by themselves in an unfamiliar environment and they get anxious. This is also a great way to challenge gifted students if they've really just passed out of all of the high school level materials you can offer. Sending them to a local college is a great way to challenge them, or even sending them to an online college. Also, you can offer a wider variety of subjects this way. My favorite example of this is science. In most high schools, you get some variation of the biochem and physics trio. And for kids who don't really love any of those topics, they may think science is just not for them. They're just not cut out for STEM. But what if they go to a college and they take an astronomy class or a geology class or a physical anthropology class and find out that they love it? That's something that they can learn early and possibly find a major that they want to pursue early on. That's an incredible gift. Dual enrollment can also potentially provide transferable college credit. I do have an asterisk there. Both AP credits and dual enrollment college credits can potentially provide credits down the line when your student fully enrolls in a school, but policies vary. So in some cases, if your student takes a dual enrollment class at a college and then they go to apply to a four-year university, this certainly can add rigor, known rigor. But when it comes to actually getting credit, there are some colleges that will say, well, this was part of your high school, so we can't transfer that in. There will be some that say, well, show us your high school graduation requirements. If this class was extra, if you didn't need it to graduate from high school, then sure, we'll transfer it in. Otherwise, it was part of high school. So you really do have to look at the fine print there. There's no guarantee. Every college is going to be different. So read the fine print. Same thing with AP tests. Different scores will get different amounts of credit, and you just never know which colleges are going to require scores of 3, 4, or 5, and what kind of credit they'll give. Will it be just credits, just numbers, or will an AP score actually get your kid out of some prerequisite down the road? You don't know until you research each individual school. So what else do we want to think about? How else can we help our students present a good and accurate package of who they are as students? What to submit? Definitely recommendation letters. If your kid is applying to schools that will accept recommendation letters, find some people who really appreciate your child, know them well, and want to write a strong letter of recommendation. That will go a long way. Seeing someone outside the family Praise your child and talk about their abilities, motivations, work ethic, personality. That can be such a valuable addition to an application package. Also, achievements, extracurricular activities. If they have anything like maybe they've published their writing, maybe they submitted to a contest, maybe they went to a science fair or participated in National History Day, those are well-known activities, and you can provide proof of participation in those. And certainly if there were any awards, that can be a real bonus to an application. And then make sure you have a clearly labeled transcript that notes the validated items. So when you've done one of these things, taken a dual enrollment class, taken a test, something like that, make sure it's clear, or taken a course at any outside entity, even outside of dual enrollment. Make sure it's clearly noted on your transcript so that it's easy for an admissions officer to see where these classes came from and what is an outside evaluation versus what is a mommy grade. Things to save as you go along through high school, maybe even middle school, because you never know which kids might be ready for early college. Save some work samples, especially if you have something that has been graded and commented upon by an outside teacher. Dual enrollment syllabi, I cannot stress this enough. If your kids take college classes, save the syllabi. Very often when they go to try to transfer those credits, if the school they're transferring to, or the school that they're going to as freshmen and want to transfer credits into, if that school is not familiar with this particular class that they've taken, they may not give credit unless they can review the syllabus. So I tell the students all the time, that syllabus is gold. Save it, print it, put it in a file, put it in Dropbox, save it somewhere safe, keep it on your desktop for the next 4 years. You might need it. Keep good records of classes taken, curricula used, whether it's your own materials or something you're bringing in from the outside. And remember that for homeschoolers, you may need to provide detailed course descriptions, so it can be helpful to take notes along the way about what you've done and come up with a little paragraph about each class that you've done or signed up for. And if you're using outside tutors, outside teachers, maybe some little biographical notes about what they are bringing to the situation here. All right, so let's take a moment to talk about transcripts. That's always something that homeschoolers ask me about. What do I need to put on the transcript? What does it need to look like? But really what I want to tell you is don't agonize over the format. Yes, you need to get all the data in there. Yes, put all the classes on. Make sure that you've added everything your student has done, whether it was independently at home or at a local college or even in a co-op. Put everything on there. But don't worry about the formatting so much, because the odds are good that you're going to have to retype it all into the application anyway. Schools often use the Common App or something that would come after the Common App called the SRAR, where students have to retype in all of their courses and grades. So in that case, colleges aren't going to see your beautifully handcrafted homeschool transcript until the student decides to enroll there and they need an official record of their grades. Very often decisions are made on these student-entered records. So don't stress out about the format, just get it done. Just make sure it's clear and note those outside validated items. A couple of notes on credits and grades. There are different systems of counting credits. For a year-long course, depending on where you live, it might be worth 1 credit, or it might be worth 10 credits. So a semester might be 0.5 or 5 credits. So depending on what your local school system does, what's common in your state, pick the system that makes the most sense for you. Leading up to, usually a required graduation amount of being 240, 260 units, or, like 25 units to graduate. So check what your local schools are doing and maybe follow along in their footsteps. And then remember that if your student is taking dual enrollment classes, 1 semester or quarter college class is usually equal to a year of high school. So your student doesn't have to take a full load of classes, 6 or 7 college classes. I mean, that would be impossible, right? Throughout the year to be fulfilling these requirements, where they may take 6 classes at the high school level each semester. They might only take 3 and 3 at the college level. Yeah, credits needed to graduate, 20, 24 on average, but you want to show rigor, so you might want to make your graduation requirements a little more rigorous. Think about grading in terms of mastery. Most of us as homeschoolers don't let our kids just scoot by with a C. We're usually sticking with a topic until they have mastered it. So think of it that way. If your student mastered the homeschool course to your satisfaction, if they met the goals you set for them, then they earned an A, right? If they go on and take a test and get a good score, great, give them an A. If they wrote a paper that you thought was especially excellent, give them an A. We tend to be harder on our homeschooled kids than a lot of teachers are on their students. In school, there's often extra credit, extra points for attendance, for turning things in on time, for being a good friend. Students can pick up points all over the place. So I don't think there's a need for us as homeschoolers to be so overly critical of our students. If they have met the goals we set for them, then they've met your standards, and that's an A. Don't forget to add an extra grade point for AP and college classes. So, a 4.0 is straight A's on an unweighted scale, but AP and dual enrollment classes are weighted. In most cases, that's +1, so an A would be worth 5 instead of 4. But in some areas, they're only doing a plus 0.5. So again, check what's going on in your area, do what makes the most sense to you. So that is my short spiel on validating your homeschool learning, but I'm here. If you have questions, feel free to get in touch. You can find me on Facebook at Beyond the Transcript or on Instagram at Transfer Savvy. And I do have a college admissions newsletter at subscribepage.com/Jamie, Jaime. And you can subscribe and get some college news every once in a while, along with a free download of my favorite books on the college admissions process. So I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to hearing from you.